My soul is hungry for your nourishing words. I seek you with all my heart. Don't let me miss the signs you have posted along the way. I have hidden your word in my heart and ask that you train me in the ways of wise living. I will transfer to my lips all the counsel that comes from your mouth. Praise be to you, O God, as you teach me your degrees. When people cannot see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. Where there is no vision, no redemptive revelation of God, the people perish. But people who keep the laws of God, which includes those of humanity, and attend to what God reveals, then happy, fortunate, and enviable are they. They are most blessed.
When Jesus heard what happened, he withdrew by a boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. So when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to Jesus and said, "This is a remote place. It's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus replied, "They do not need to go away. You feed them." And the disciples answered, "But we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." And Jesus said, "Bring them to me." And then he directed the people to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, Jesus gave thanks and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the people. And the number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, women, and children. And they ate until they were fully satisfied. And then the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls that were left over.
If you want to see the presence of God in our lives, we must first believe that God is there. So let's begin with this prayer. Loving God, thank you for this day, this time, this moment that we have. Thank you for your presence in all of our lives and for your presence in this moment. Help us to see you and know you this day, and help us believe and trust and feel. And in this hour, help us to know that faith is the bridge between where I am and where I hope to be. Amen. So, when I was 15, I sank into a type of depression that just steadily worsened. And by my 16th birthday, I was one of those suicidal teenagers. I grew up in this big rural family with a lot of difficult family dynamics and a chaotic family life and household, and in a fundamentalist religion that was really more about guilt than it was about anything else. And on top of that, realizing I was gay, and then having gone through all my years of having started school of being bullied, both physically and mentally, and scapegoated, and my life was a mess. And it finally crashed in on me, and at that point in my life, I didn't have anybody, or didn't know that I didn't think that I had anybody I could talk to about any of it, about myself or anything. And the one adult person I had tried to talk to about it, she told somebody else, and that only made it worse for me. I couldn't see an outcome that was going to make anything better, and I was convinced that my family was never going to be okay with me, and the God that I was being taught wasn't ever going to include me either. So I felt shut out, I felt alone, and I felt worthless and no value, and I suspect that's how a lot of teenagers feel someday. But it seemed like this sort of fog of despair surrounded me, and I felt like I was drowning. So now, on this day, I had a plan. I had a plan that was going to end those feelings, by ending my life. We lived in the southwest Missouri, on the edge of the Ozarks Mountains. we were part of the struggling poor, and I was one of 6 siblings. And I don't know if you grew up in a big family, but if you had any privacy at all, you had to make a place that was yours somewhere where you could get away from everything. And my special place was on a rocky bluff. If you followed this bluff up, it would keep going higher, and was on a bluff like this, and there was a lake several hundred feet below. It was really a beautiful place and a beautiful view, but it involved climbing, and it was always this steep little narrow climb to reach this narrow ledge to get there. And it was always difficult to maintain my balance and footing during the climb onto the ledge, because if you missed a step, you would be plummeting over to a sure death down that mountainside and into the water below. And that was my plan. I had contemplated it a lot of times, many times, but this particular day was different. I had made peace with the fear of the pain that I thought would happen because of the fall, and because I could know that I was going to get a release from the rest of the pain that I've been feeling for so long. And I reached that most narrow point on the ledge and stopped. And I just stood there, because in my head I was numb. And bluffs like this, it's ancient rock. It's been there for centuries, and it's always covered with loose gravel that you can feel under your foot. And so that day I stood there, and I could feel that gravel shifting under my feet, and I knew all I had to do was let go. And I started losing my balance and started to fall. All I had to do was let it happen. Sometimes the distance between where we are and where we want to be is wide. And there are times in our lives where we have only God. The psalmist in today's reading said it, "My soul is hungry for your nourishing words." And there are times that we hold on only through our faith. The faith teaches us that we are all broken in some way, and we are all in need of God. But God's grace is painted on the canvas of despair. If only we can see that. Like the mess of a construction site, sometimes our lives and our faith is messy. What do we do when we reach those times that we can't seem to find our way in the mess? How do we bridge the gap between where we are and where we want to be? Well, it is only faith that bridges that gap, that bridges the distance, and only faith helps us focus on the vision of what can be, not just on the mess, the stuff around us. Faith is never easy. Faith is hard. And living a life of faith is harder than living a life not with faith. But why is that? The difficult truth about faith is that it won't answer all of our questions in life, and it does not solve all of our problems either. The faith is about trust. It's not about being certain, but that's not how most of us thought faith worked, and it's not how we wanted faith to work. But if living a life of faith teaches us anything, it's to be patient, because God isn't through with you or me yet. God isn't finished with any of us yet. Faith teaches us patience. And learning patience is hard because you and I, we live in a world, in a culture that's the opposite of patience. We live in a world that's very focused on us as individuals, not the good of groups and communities usually. And living a life of faith makes us more aware of and in touch with our own lives and the lives of the people with whom we share this world and share our space and our lives. And living a life of faith makes us aware of the choices we make, the outcomes of those choices and how they affect other people, and our awareness of how we're treating other people, the impact that that has on others in our community. Faith is hard. Living a life of faith moves us to humility, toward generosity of spirit, respect for others, care, concern, love for others. And faith examines us. Faith checks the core of our beings and sometimes asks us to change ourselves, to change our behaviors, to change our actions. And that's why faith is a harder choice to make. It's the harder way to live. But there's an upside. There is. And we'll get there, okay? Have you seen the show on the Home and Garden channel, HGTV, called The Property Brothers? If you're familiar with that show, they're twin brothers, Drew and Jonathan, and one's a realtor, one's a contractor remodeler. And they help people find fixer-upper houses that can be remodeled and that are more affordable than move-in ready houses are. And usually the people on the show, probably like most of us, start out wanting a house that's out of our reach. You know, here's my list, okay? and I want everything on the list in this house, and usually that's not affordable, so it's a matter of starting to work with people to figure out what's your priority. Well, on the show, the brothers take the people and they take them to a house that can be remodeled and made into as close to their dream home as possible. Have you ever been involved in a remodeling project? Yeah. I don't know about you, but we lived for 15 years. We had an 80-year-old house, and that's all you do is remodel. And with work, I've been through 4 relocations of the organization, and remodeling projects are a lot. Any remodeling project has some pretty basic elements that are pretty much alike no matter what you go into, and you've got to sort of develop your plan and your vision of what's going to be the outcome of the remodeling. You have to find the right place and establish the costs, and you have to know that unexpected things are going to come up, so you got to be determined and you got to be prepared because it's going to happen, and construction will make a lot of mess and it'll get worse before it gets better. That's just the way remodeling goes. And at times you end up questioning, God, why did I do this? And you also have to know that the outcome's going to look a little different maybe than what you originally thought or originally planned or envisioned. And there's always going to be a little more cost than you're prepared to do. But, all of that sounds familiar, and you find a way to do it. Remodeling, the wisdom in Proverbs today says that when people cannot see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. Where there's no vision, no redemptive revelation of God, people perish. So when you get to faith, the construction or renovation of our faith, faith is the vision. Faith, it's the redemptive work of God. And the building of that, the building of our lives of faith, usually require just a ton of remodeling and renovation because it's all about molding us, remolding us, changing our beliefs, our habits, our behaviors, our actions, and making them into something that may be new or different. So faith affects these changes in us. We're remodeling ourselves into something else, and not like it happened on the Property Brothers show. It's a messy, messy process. There are many things along the way that can cloud our vision, and we can get so focused sometimes on the mess around us that we lose sight of the greater, larger thing that's happening, or even where it is that we want this to be, who we want to be. So faith has a big element that's about trust, learning to trust God, to trust ourselves, and to trust each other. And trust is another huge building process as well, because it takes preparation, it takes cultivation of relationships and an understanding and building of our humility, and it tests our perseverance. And faith and trust cannot in this way be separated. St. Augustine taught us that faith is to believe what you do not see, and the reward of this faith is to see what it is you believe. Believe, and you will see. Faith is a bridge. It becomes that bridge between what you're doing now and what you want to do, who I am now and who I want to be, who we are, who we want to be. Now, our gospel reading told us that Jesus withdrew to a private place. He needed to get away from the mess of the crowds that constantly surrounded and followed him for a while. And however, the crowds saw where he was going, followed him there, and he went about healing their sick. And the disciples who were there with Jesus suddenly seemed to realize that night was coming, and here were these 5,000 people who were hungry and needed to eat. But like we do sometimes, we're like, well, we only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. How is it that we're going to do that? And the situation was a mess. So they had all these people and everybody hungry and late in the day and needing to feed them. So in the reading, Jesus took the bread and the fish, gave thanks, broke the bread, and all 5,000 people were fed with baskets full left over. In the building of their faith, the disciples at this time had not yet built up a level of trust in Jesus to know that the 5,000 would be taken care of. And maybe they should have known that, because their experiences with Jesus to this point should have prepared them to expect that kind of outcome. Now, some people, some of us, take this story and believe it literally as a miracle performed by Jesus. And understand what I'm going to say. Everyone's free to believe what you want to be and to take this story as you want to take it. But some theologians believe that within that huge crowd of people, within the 5,000, there were people who actually had some food with them, but were not sharing it. And when Jesus took this small amount of food and blessed it and broke the bread and began to share it, that this was an act demonstrating generosity through caring and through love and sharing with the people around. And this act of generosity on the part of Jesus was contagious among this crowd, and everyone began to share what they had and took the portions that helped to spread it across everyone, and everyone had enough food, even with food left over. Believe it, however, that you in your life and your faith need to believe or want to believe. But understand that the miracle here, either way, is the miracle, the act of generosity, and that is the redemptive work of God. The generosity of God's love and care and concern for us, we're the 5,000, for us, and Jesus' unconditional care to make sure that everyone was fed. This is the vision. This is the kind of faith that is the vision. It's the harder choice, because it's the choice to love and care for others, and to do that with grace and humility. Generosity then became the bridge between 5 loaves and 2 fish and feeding 5,000 people. So whatever happened, it was the faith, the generosity that made it happen. Helen Keller was once asked, what would be worse than being born blind? And she said, having sight without vision. Sometimes our vision is so clouded by the mess, 5,000 people pulling at you, or the mess of your life, or my life, or the mess of the construction. Sometimes we're so clouded by the mess that we can't see what it is God will do, is doing, needs to do in our life or in the situation we're in. Even those who were physically present with Christ couldn't keep sight of the vision, and part of that vision was because they were engaged in helping bring about this enormous change in the world. They were engaged in being part of the dominion of God being built on earth. And the dominion that you and I, all of humanity, still is helping build and participates in today. Many times it is difficult for us to see potential in ourselves or in other people, and the potential that tells us that we can do better. Typically, we write people off, or we write ourselves off. We think that people can never change, or we believe that we can't change. We give up on ourselves or give up on others. But you know, Jesus calls us to a different standard. In every encounter he had, Jesus did not see people as they were, but rather saw them as who they could become. People like Peter and Matthew, Mary Magdalene, the woman caught in adultery, and many others, Jesus saw and believed their potential, worked to help teach them, and trusted them to reach it. We're usually taught that people have to earn our trust, work for it, and then we will trust them. But Jesus offered a different paradigm of trust, to show faith by first trusting and giving others the opportunity to grow into it. And this is the harder path of faith, because faith, that comes with some risk. And if the risk is that in our lives of faith, sometimes people will disappoint us, or hurt us, or fail us, and people don't always do what we think they're going to do. They'll do the opposite. And lots of people don't have a track record of being trustworthy. And sometimes organizations, institutions, churches fail us. And these are logical reasons to give up on that and let go of it. But Jesus brought a new vision, and that gives us a vision of a new humanity, a new community that plays by different rules. And that, the foundation of that new community was unconditional love and care and concern for each other, seeing the potential in each other first. For us, this is the part of faith that can be very confusing, because it is our task to approach everyone from a position of love and grace first. First, from a position of trusting and giving them the benefit of the doubt and an opportunity to grow. We get that a little confused sometimes with that seeming to say to us, lay down in the floor and be walked on. Be a doormat. Let yourself just stand and take it, even to the point of being abused. That's not the paradigm. That's not what Jesus was teaching in this. And we have to first start with knowing we can't fix everyone or fix every situation that arises. Remember that the difficult truth about faith is that it won't answer all of our questions or solve all of our problems. But through the humanity of Jesus, we are assured and called to remember that because we are humans, we will sometimes hurt others, and our trust will sometimes be misplaced. But because of our faith, we will understand that God is there to help us, to know what to do, and how to heal when those things happen. This is the redemptive work of God in each of us, God who is present in us, and God who reaches each one of us in our time. Faith is the harder path, the more difficult journey, because it comes with more risk. But our faith bridges the risk and helps us to remember we are not alone in taking the risk. Everywhere we look in Dallas, I don't know where you live, but everywhere you look in Dallas, there is seemingly endless road construction. And often we are inconvenienced by it through traffic problems and road lane changes and detours and heavy closures and heavy equipment and dust, mud, you name it, unexpected things. And when I drive here on Sunday morning, my drive from downtown Dallas takes me through several miles of different highway construction projects. And I am sure that many of you experience the same thing. And I never know exactly how long it's going to take, because you never know exactly what piece of it is open or closed. And it's really a mess. And when you drive through all of that, it's all you can see is the mess. And it's hard to think and see when you're driving in the middle of that and responding to the uneven lanes or anything else, that there's an outcome of that project that eventually is going to make it ease traffic and make better access and better driving conditions. I don't know about you, but I've lived in Dallas long enough to have lived through the reconstruction of 75 North, Central Expressway. That started in the 90s and went on forever. It included digging the DART rail tunnels and the nightmare driving scenarios that took us down into these pits on narrow one-lane roads and backed us up for miles of traffic jam. And most people wouldn't even get on Central during those years, so you had to constantly find a way around it. And highway construction, the mess gets worse before it gets better. And it seems like each time you drive through it, oh my God, there is more mess. And it's a lot of different moving parts that all have to be managed. And sometimes you have to convince yourself, there's a master plan, I know, that's going to make this all come together. But it is sure hard to see at taking an individual look at it. Well, that is, those are the pieces. That's the mess. But those pieces do start to come together, and we start to recognize what it's going to be. I don't know if any of you ride DART, but look at what we have now after years and years of construction. We have a world-class transit system, and coupled with a wide and smooth multi-lane freeway that connects far north to downtown, and it's part of this integrated freeway system. And if you didn't notice it, we're one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. So these roads, it's important to try to get this to happen. Our lives are like that. It's a big mess at times, and you see the pieces, but you don't always, it's a little hard to keep focused sometimes on that. There is a plan. Those pieces are going to come together. And our faith journey is like that, because we come to church, we study, we do the scriptures, we volunteer, we feed people, we teach or attend Sunday school or sing and pray and visit people and get involved and participate. And it seems like these are good things, and they seem like they're going to lead us into good things and better life. But in the middle of that, sometimes we get our feelings somehow hurt, where we have differences with someone, or we're disappointed, or someone we love gets cancer, or we get laid off, or a relationship ends and our lives go the opposite direction, turn into a mess. Sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you have this, it's good on one hand and not on the other, and it's difficult to see what the outcome will be. But the answer is always both easy and hard at the same time. Because we have to start first with just acknowledging that maybe We cannot always see the good future God has planned for us, but there is one, and God has faithfully promised that to each of us. We have to step back a lot of times and humble ourselves to see what's coming next. There was a lot I didn't know that day that I was standing out on the ledge on the Missouri cliff. You know, no one in my life knew that that place even existed. There was no one who knew I was there. There wasn't anyone who knew what I was contemplating and that I had this plan or that I'd set it in motion. There wasn't anyone I could have called out to in those moments, and there wasn't anyone I could have yelled for if I'd changed my mind at the last second. And it's funny, you can feel sometimes your feet start to go out from under you, and that was happening. And this gravel underneath, I lost my balance and I started to fall. I just was in this fog, but suddenly there was a real presence that I felt, and words inside my head said, "Stop! Wait!" And by the time I heard them, I didn't know if I could even do that. And there was this split second that I twisted sideways and grabbed onto the only thing I saw, which was this bush growing literally out of the rock, and I'd never even noticed it there before. But it broke my fall. And so now I'm hanging there on this bush with this voice still in my head, just saying, "Stop, wait," and I did. It's not clear to me how I got back up on the ledge. But what is clear to me was that it was God who stopped me. And what is clear to me is that I wouldn't be here today if that hadn't been the case, obviously. I had dreamed and hoped for a God that was different from the God I was being taught. And somehow that God that I had somewhere knew in my own self existed but had never met, somehow that God is the one who reached me that day. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my faith was the bridge between there and where I wanted to be. The God I had been taught would have let me fall. The God who was present with me that day was the God who would not let me go. That's the God of your life as well. What I didn't know that day was a lot as teenagers. It took me several years to work my way out of some of the messes that were in my life. And when I hear about teen suicides today, those words resonate particularly with me. And when I hear people say, "It gets better," it gets better, that's the message that people need to hear. My life did get better. It doesn't get better without work and without people who care. I found counselors who knew what they were doing and worked with me and helped me heal my whole spirit. I came out to my parents and my siblings and found acceptance. I went to school. I had a good job. I moved to Dallas. Found MCC and found the faith that wasn't exactly what I knew was even possible. And I reconnected through MCC, through my faith there, to the God who didn't let me fall. I made a whole new life and answered the calling to ministry and to social work that I've now done for more than 35 years. And I met a fabulous husband who we've just marked 26 years. And my life since that day wasn't always easy, and certainly wasn't always perfect, but it's been filled with love and relationships and friendships and colleagues and family of choice and service and community and grace and the God that day reached me. Those were only some of the things I couldn't see when I was standing out there on that ledge. There is so much sometimes in our lives that can cloud our vision and our judgment. And had I let go and not believed that God was present in the midst of one of the worst moments of crisis in my life, I would have missed out on the rest of my life. Faith is to believe what you do not see. And the reward of faith is to see what you believe. You may not have a moment as dramatic as that in your life, and I've debated about sharing this experience with you. And actually, I hope you don't have something in your past like that. But everyone has those moments where you're ready to give up on someone or something or yourself, a relationship, a career, a dream, your life. And sometimes we find the piece of courage we need in ourselves, or sometimes we help other people find it in themselves. There's always so much that can cloud our vision and judgment. But when we make community, we do something that makes a huge difference for all of us. It's the place we learn and start to act on faith that is the bridge between where we are, where we want to be. We are called to be bridges for each other, and we can help each other. Each of you has stood by a friend, a person at a time in need, and we can help each other always look past the mess and see what may otherwise be in front of us. Maybe help each other see the lives that we were meant to live and the lives that God has for us. So throughout my life since that day on the Missouri Cliff, I've seen the presence of God at work in me, and I see the presence of God at work in you. This God is not finished with any of us. God does not let us fall. God does not let us go. So remember the words from the earlier reading. My soul is hungry for your nourishing words. I seek you with all my heart. Don't let me miss the signs you have posted along the way. I'm hiding your words in my heart. Believe, and you will see. And the people who keep the laws of God, which include the laws of humanity, and attend to what God reveals to us, then happy, fortunate, and enviable are they. They are most blessed. It is you and I who are most blessed. Amen.